Alrighty, hello there, folks. We're live, hanging out here. Dr. Pepper run again? Nope, I'm right here. All right. Probably. You're fired. You're fired, Jamie. You're fired, dude. That's it.
It's shots fired.
So anyways, folks, let's see. Let's give people a chance to come in here. Oh, there was 6 before, and now there's only 4, down to 2. All right. That's cool. Right on. So anyways, we're here today talking about Trial by Media, which is a new show on Netflix, produced by George Clooney, oddly enough, and somebody else and whose name I'm forgetting. But so you guys remember the other night I went live and was talking about episode 1, which involved the Jenny Jones talk show, the murder that resulted from that, from an episode of that show. And anyways, I was talking about that one. If I don't know. Hopefully you guys have had 2 days, because you guys know I was talking to Ricky Kidd last night. Awesome discussion with Ricky. Hope a lot of you get over there to go check that one out, because it was brilliant. So I got to talk to Ricky Kidd last night. So hopefully, maybe you guys had a chance yesterday and today to watch some more of it. It's very interesting stuff. So we're going to be moving into talking about episode 2 now here today. And episode 2 deals with the subway vigilante in New York City back in, I think it was
1983.
Early 80s, right. And so it was back in the early 80s, and basically crime was just a mess in New York City. The subways weren't safe. They describe it as New York was on the verge of bankruptcy in a sense. So it didn't have enough money to be able to man the subway with uniformed officers and stuff like that. And so, and it leads to this interesting thing where you've got these guardian angel guys, just these citizens that, get involved and try to partially act like police officers. They try to make citizens arrests. They basically try to intervene where most people are afraid to. The
Guardian Angels, they've been in movies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the exact movie, but I think they might have been in the movie. The Warriors might have been too early. They were in movies, and that guy, Salawis,
mm-hmm.
I can't remember his first name, but Salawis, I think, is his last name, the one who started it. I've seen him in movies where they've had the Guardian Angels in there back in the 80s movies for old people like me.
Right. Wisconsin is wide open and no more delay. COVID talk. I'm only going to say this about the COVID-19, folks. I believe we're ready to start reopening. The problem we're going to face here, folks, is that for some reason the leadership is interested in keeping the country locked down. They're not interested in learning in what's successful in other places to try to figure out how we can get back to work. They're basically just taking the lazy approach to this thing, and at the expense of average everyday Americans. So it's starting to get sticky out there. And all I can say is to try to appeal to everybody's finer sense of, human side, or whatever however you want to look at it. Look, it's really just common sense. It's really just common sense. You just got to try to minimize the spread of this thing. And there are indicators out there as to what things can work. And I leave it to everybody to get out there and explore those things. But I believe there is a common sense path. I believe our leaders are, for whatever reason, are not wanting to get on board with some of that. And we'll see what is going to happen, because over the next couple of weeks, people are getting upset. And as I said, there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear over the COVID-19 itself. And then there's a lot of fear resulting from the lockdowns, where people are scared that they're not going to be that they're going to be destitute and basically screwed when all the lockdowns are lifted. So it's a dangerous situation where people have a lot of reason to be scared, and so hopefully people just keep your heads. Logic, serious. It's just logic. Just logically think about it, and I don't want to get too much into that, but basically, folks, be watching our leaders right now because they're not necessarily doing what's best for us. I don't know. It's real sketchy what I see going on in the leadership. So everybody keep watching them because I'm expecting another AEDPA or another Patriot Act to be coming along here pretty soon. So let's all be mindful of that, and let's be vigilant and watching out for a situation like that. All right, moving on from that, let's get back to trial by media.
This is going to be good because our friend Rhonda had nothing but a stump. Yeah. She said this episode made her furious. So
yeah,
be interesting which ones of us she tries to stab first on our views on it.
I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, to be perfectly honest. A lot of mixed feelings about it.
Watching it the second time, yeah, it brought him up.
Right. For me, it's like, I mean, it gets so wild here, but on the surface, you have Bernard Goetz, right, who was brutally mugged by some younger African American gentleman in his past. Now, that led to one day he was on a subway train, and I guess after his last incident with being mugged, he no longer rode the subway without a gun. Problem is, it wasn't licensed. There's a lot of problems with that. The fact that he wasn't allowed to carry it. He had applied for it. He should have been. He was the type of businessman that should have been approved for it, but they denied him. So these are all interesting little factors, but ultimately, he ends up gunning these 4 African American teenage, well, maybe young men. I don't know if some of them might have been in their 20s, but young men on the subway train. Now the story is these boys came up to him and were asking for $5, I guess, right? And he proceeds to shoot them and start firing. So he ends up, after all that's said and done, he takes off, runs out of the subway train, slips between trains, and somehow disappears. Okay?
Can I address something real quick first?
Yeah.
So in reference to just what you had said there, that they said they asked him for $5, right? And that's one of the things that I don't think they really addressed. Well, at least from what we saw in here, they asked for the $5 is right. What he said. Well, and from his previous experiences, he was scared. What happened if he would have said no? What would they have? Would they have walked away? They had no intentions of walking away. That's why they had sharpened screwdrivers. So right. This is one of the things in there that, for me, he honestly, even without knowing right then, it was their demeanor and everything that they were doing that made him fearful. In this aspect, he was right for his thoughts. He was correct on what was going to happen to him if he didn't have the $5. And if he didn't have a gun on him, might have been a different story as to who would be killing who.
Yes, granted. And that's part of why I have mixed feelings about this whole thing. It's for me, it's who I guess over the course of this live, folks, we're gonna be maybe exploring who was actually to blame in this. Because I'm really, I think there's enough blame to go around, but I mean, ultimately, who was the most to blame in this thing? And
I'll throw my 2 cents in now.
For me, it's going to be the city of New York. Go ahead.
That is a part of it, but those 4 boys, to me, it was them. Their intentions were not good. I truly don't feel that.
We don't know that, though. I mean, I agree with you that they were most likely and 99% up to no freaking good having sharpened screwdrivers in their pockets. Okay, I'm not going to take that away from you. You're absolutely 100% right. But they never even got an opportunity to do anything. Literally,
that's because then
my
it's too
problem.
late.
And this is why another reason why I have mixed feelings about it is because I appreciate Bernard Goetz felt threatened after being mugged and wanted to protect himself. But what I think happened with Bernard Goetz is that after being mugged and after buying a gun and arming himself, I think he started to fantasize a bit. I think he started to play out little scenarios in his mind. Okay, because he just seems all too willing to be doing this. And that's not my only reason for believing that. I'm going to move on to that reason right now. The other reason why is number two. There's actually two more reasons. Number two reason why, when he's talking in the interview and he says, I walked over and saw the other guy there, and I said, oh, you don't look too bad. And so I gave him another one. Okay, let's go. Before we get to my third point, let's talk about that one, because his lawyers make the argument at trial that never happened. Okay, that it was in his head. Okay, and it gets basically corroborated because all the witnesses on the subway all claim it was all rapid fire. Boom, 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 boom. There wasn't space between shots. So that's what I mean, and that was the testimony that came in. So, okay, fine. I believe that he was imagining that happening. But why was he imagining that happening? If the truth is that he shot these boys quickly because he was in fear and just shot them boom, 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 and was incapacitating them quickly, then where does this memory for him come from of relishing of, oh, you don't seem too hurt. Here, let me fire a couple more to you. To me, that shows that this guy has been fantasizing a bit. For him to have mistaken that for a real memory.
Here's the thing is, if you look at, when you look at people that are in times of crisis or assault, how quickly time actually goes by compared to what really happened. Mm-hmm. I do think he did say that, but everything happened so fast that those gunshots happened that fast. That fifth one, so the fourth one he missed. Let's just say one of them he missed.
Right.
And to shoot that quickly and then walk over to that one and say you don't, I think that probably very well did happen. That's the only part of this situation, or no, actually that's the second part of this situation.
Yeah.
That
I would have said the same thing if I didn't have witness testimony telling me all the shots came boom, 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 rapid fire. Because if he's taking the time to say that before he shoots, that ceases the rapid fire. That's the only problem I have with that. Otherwise, I would believe the same way.
So, that stuff happens so quick, and I don't even remember what gun he had, but if you look at how quickly you can fire off 5 rounds, it's pretty damn fast. Secondly, the second part of that is one being shot in the back. So that right there is a problem. And now I kind of forgot what it was your comments before. I had a statement I was going to make.
Oh. Well, let me see.
Hopefully
Well, okay. So what so there's that. So we have him saying that, and so therefore it seems like he may have been fantasizing about this a bit, or, look, maybe even justifiably. Look, I understand he was a victim, and so he certainly may have had some things going on in his head. No doubt, but obviously there was some thought. For me, there's some proof of that. Now, back to what Jamie said. Yes, these boys had shown up, and yes, they had in their pockets sharpened screwdrivers, and they're not likely up to any good. Potentially those are weapons. Maybe at worst to hurt and maim somebody, or at least they're tools for them to go and rob somebody and take their personal property. You see? Yeah. So no matter what, those things being in their pockets, they're not choir boys heading down to church. Okay. So, and that's why this one's so sticky. I mean, I'm like, yeah, okay, those boys were probably up to no good. And Bernard was probably legitimately scared, but having said that, Bernard kind of gives me the impression like he was bucking for this situation to happen is the way he comes off to me. And that's my problem with Bernard.
I don't think he was bucking for it. And I remembered my comments now. At first, when I watched this, and you don't find out really till you get to the end.
Uh-huh.
At first, when I watched this, I thought, well, the first incident actually made him racist. Until you get to the end, you find out 3 years earlier he had made racist comments.
Right.
Originally, I didn't think that was the case, and then watching it here today, the other statement that he made, it wasn't about race, it was about New Yorkers. When he's in the interview and the detective starts talking to him, that triggered him right there to put his head down and say, hey, I don't even like when New Yorkers talk. You're so rude. You talk with anger, and I think he's got a little bit of autism in him, possibly. Yeah. Maybe Asperger's syndrome.
Right.
There's something there. But he's also very smart, and if he had not made any of the race comments previously, me personally, I wouldn't see a problem with this scenario. I wouldn't think there was any premeditation besides the shot into the second boy, or the boy the second time.
Right.
That stuff is premeditated to me. But again, not being there myself, you don't know what you would do in those situations especially with already having bad memories in your head. But he does show signs of racism. Who knows where that was triggered from?
Right.
Not even signs. He actually makes racist comments, right, and they were 3 years prior that he did them.
So it's going to bring me now, folks, to my third reason why I believe Bernard was bucking for this situation. Okay. He commits this act. We won't even call it a crime. He commits this act. He runs away. Okay. He's immediately scared about what he did. And might argue, realizes there would maybe consequences for it. Right? So he runs. They are clueless. They are not going to find this guy. They are totally not going to find this guy, but it's all over the news and the newspapers about this, subway vigilante, right? And everybody's talking about Charles Bronson and Death Wish and, and all that sort of stuff, right? So he's sitting at home and he's like, oh, wow. People are like kind of thinking like what I did, like I'm a hero, like, right? And then suddenly his desire for attention kicks in. And even though they were never going to find him, he goes and turns himself in. Oh, yes, I'm the guy. Here I am. So for me, that to me shows me, or at least suggests to me, that he had some pride in what he had done. And so that's the additional reason why I believe Bernard was not as innocent and unknowing as some might think. So that's my personal opinion.
Well, but it also talks to the state of affairs of the subway system in New York back then. People were, when you say vigilante, people do a lot. They think automatically in reference to being a hero, and look at how many people, when they interviewed him, the news interviewed him, and they were talking about this, saying, yeah, it is bad. We're glad somebody finally stood up to these people.
Yeah.
Well,
and I get that. I do. So, and that's why that's why this brings us to, well, we'll talk a little bit about the four boys, the four young men first. So obviously now I've made you guys, I think I've made pretty clear to you guys how I feel about Bernard Goetz. Okay. That I understand I do have some amount of understanding for him, but the caveat is that I believe he made a transition at some point, and that he actually was fantasizing about that day happening. So that's my thoughts. Jamie has expressed his thoughts about it. He thinks, that he clearly thinks that, Bernard Goetz was reacting somewhat, justifiably. You know what I mean? Because he was scared.
Not going to say logically, but I feel justification.
Right. So that brings us to these kids, and obviously, folks, they were up to no good. Okay, you don't go running around with sharpened screwdrivers and stuff like that in your pockets when you're planning to go throw a surprise party for somebody. So, I mean,
here's part two to that, though, Rich. Is most people that get concealed carry weapons, they're not the criminal type. They don't really want to use them.
Right.
It's the way to do it legally for your own protection. Now, I think that gave him a sense of empowerment against situations to happen like that again, but the state wouldn't give it to him legally. He did get, or he was working on the concealed part, which you brought up. He was trying to do everything legally for his own protection. Now, just because you have a concealed weapon permit does not mean that you can literally shoot anybody anywhere you want.
But he would have avoided that time.
Yes.
He ended up serving time because of that very thing. And most people agree he should have been approved for the type of business he does and everything. So that's what makes it all more just bizarre. But yeah.
Well, and we're also looking, this is back in '83. You look at today when they do, I don't know what training was back then. I think I was 83. I was only 7 years old. But nowadays, because I'm a concealed carrier, and nowadays they train you on certain things. And you and I talked the other night. One of the specifics is like when he shot one in the back. Well, that right there puts me in prison right away, because if you shoot somebody in the back, that's implying that the threat is leaving.
Right.
And then there's no longer a threat.
Right.
But there has been debates in the past about this in reference to, let's say you were attacked and you do get a hold of your weapon, and as soon as somebody sees that, they try to turn and run away. Well, you don't know if they're going to get another weapon and come back at you again. So there has been fair debates about that, but it's now you actually have to prove and defend yourself against why you shot somebody in the back.
Right. Well, you should have to, because I mean, look, it's kind of obvious if you're shooting somebody in the back that their back is facing you, and if their back is facing you, it's hard for them to be menacing you. So, obviously that's the logic in that situation. So, but look, regardless, I mean, I just happened to, there were things that stuck out to me when I was watching this particular episode of Trial by Media that I felt Bernard was a quiet guy, but I think I felt like he had this, well, like I explained, that he had this thing in him. After being mugged, he felt like the victim. He may have felt powerless. He may not have liked the feeling that he had after being mugged and then being tossed around by three gentlemen and beat up, and one of his knees being kicked, and all these things, they tried to push him through a plate glass door, all these things, and he felt completely helpless, and all those, I get that. And that may have screwed with his head, and that may have been part of what caused him to eventually do what he did. It's, for me, that's a perfectly logical thing. So that brings us now to, obviously Bernard was not a saint in this. Obviously, the young African American gentlemen that he shot were not saints in this. Judging by the tools that they had in their pocket, they were up to no good. Okay, now, do I believe that either one of those particular entities is mostly responsible for this. No, I don't. I believe those young boys were growing up where they were growing up, and they were growing up in a lifestyle that was what it was. Now, it's up to the city of New York, which was struggling at the time, having bankruptcy, whatever. And because New York was struggling, obviously there was a lot of poverty. So these kids, I'm not overly zealous to be blaming these kids for the situation they grew up in. They shouldn't be doing what they were doing, but to a certain extent, I blame the city of New York for allowing some of this, okay? Because they weren't managing their finances, or because whatever it was, they couldn't put manned officers in the subways to prevent some of this crime, and people were literally scared to death to ride the subways in New York. And what could they do about it? And that's where I get sympathy for Bernard Goetz again, because what can they do? What could they do? Here's the city of New York leaving those subways. I mean, it's basically like it's like the road to Rome back in the old days. Well, bandits used to sit on the side of the roads to Rome and wait for rich caravans to come through to rape or to pillage and take and steal from. Right? It's a similar situation.
Well, look at the Old West. When people would rob stagecoaches. It's the same thing. It's just on wheels.
Yeah. So anyway. So that's what it's like. The subway is there, and it's just like these criminals are coming in and just taking whatever they, using it as a free for all to make quick grabs and get away. And so the city of New York was not addressing that, and it was getting worse and worse and more out of hand until this happened.
What's a better way to have your victims come to you?
Sorry?
It's just like having your victims come to you. That's what the train was basically used as for criminals.
Right. I mean, they knew they know they could get on that train, and there's going to be somebody in there probably that they could figure they could get a few bucks out of, or
they're captive till the next stop.
Yeah. And then hop out at the next stop, run up and boom, and disappear into the crowds in New York. Right. I mean, what's to stop it? Nothing. And so the fact that the city of New York was letting that go for so long, that kind of it set the stage for this situation to happen. It is unfortunate, but that's what it is. I mean, my opinion is New York, the city of New York, is the most to blame for this situation. A lot like I feel that Warner Brothers was a lot to blame for the situation in episode 1 regarding the Jenny Jones show murder. I mean, Warner Brothers was making money off of every end of that damn thing. They owned Jenny Jones, so they were making that money. They owned Court TV, so they were making that money when they were broadcasting the trials resulting from the original show that they essentially owned, right? And they're just making money off of every end of that thing. And it's similar here, where I think New York was just grossly negligent. Obviously, they weren't making money off of this, but they were grossly negligent. They're the one common denominator in this, where they should have been doing something to prevent. I mean, because you watch that episode and you hear plenty of other people expressing how scared they are to ride the subways. Okay, you hear them in the show. And at that time, they were like, I'm scared to ride the subways too, and blah blah blah. Everybody was afraid, and it's like I always say, folks, in situations of fear, which you heard me talking about earlier in this video, that's when bad things happen.
Think about how many more crimes would have been committed had the guardian angels not come along. How many more people would have gotten beaten or robbed? Right.
I mean, in a sense, what Bernard did probably made a lot of criminals on the subway start thinking twice all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They were now thinking, oh fuck, that crazy white guy. Oh my God. Well, and that would give them pause when they go up to try to rob somebody, because now they're going to be thinking, is that person going to start shooting at us? So I mean, yeah, I'm sure that did have a curbing effect.
Well, and Al Sharpton actually made to me, it was, and Al Sharpton has done a lot of great for the Black community in New York and around the country. But one of the comments that he makes in there that kind of bothered me was that, he was generalizing Black Americans in this statement when he said, well, we should start carrying these guns if Al Sharp or if Bernard Goetz is carrying them.
Saying that, right?
Yes,
right.
So,
and Al Sharpton was trying to prevent that by creating like the African American guardian angels.
Yeah,
that he then filled the subways with.
Yeah, and
right.
so the thing about that though, and it kind of goes back to, we don't know what they definitely had all the makings of being robbers. So what would have happened if those robbers would have had guns instead of sharpened screwdrivers? Would they have robbed them at gunpoint?
Right.
I mean, this is where the perfect debate is this episode for sure, because there's unknowns and there's good and bad on both sides. And even when you get to the portion of the trial, there's good and bad in that, and there's the whole lawyers playing games. And as people watch other episodes like King Richard, you're going to see where the defense attorneys and the prosecution playing games is a big part of the problem with our legal system.
Right. And that's part of what this trial by media is pointing out too, is that it's all so much theater rather than a pursuit for justice. It seems to be more of a, whoever puts on and Sean Atwood says the same thing. It's like it's theater. Whoever puts on the best show, and generally neither side's telling the truth. Generally, like, well, for instance, Sean Atwood, the way he said it when he was, on trial back in the days in Arizona, he said, there was the prosecution over there basically saying that I was the devil incarnate and a really bad dude and blah 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 blah. He goes, and then there's my lawyers sitting there arguing that I'm this lily white angel who never did anything wrong in his life, except for sell some ecstasy or whatever, right? And it's like, he's like, both of them were lying their butts off. The truth was somewhere in the middle of those. You know what I mean? But he's sitting there saying it as the guy who was on trial, and he's like, oh yeah, both sides were on crack.
Yeah. It always seems like the truth is somewhere in the middle. This one's a prime example. And one of the things that I'll bring up is I know some people have watched him, but if you watch this till the end, he's been out of prison. He only did 8 months, and he actually to this day still lives in the same apartment. He has not been this is another part that makes it where you just kind of, you wonder his mind, would he do it again? But he's been out this long. He's not done any crime like this against anybody else.
I don't think he did it for serial reasons. I don't think it was a serial thing ever to begin with. And I believe he probably never will do it again. And he would probably live the rest of his life and not hurt anybody. I agree. I believe that. But that day, still nursing his wounds from the time that he had been mugged and all the things that were swirling around in his head at the time, it was a different story then. He was dangerous then. But I believe I agree with you in the fact that, yes, I don't believe he is dangerous nowadays. I believe he's pretty harmless.
Well, and looking at a scenario, I've never been on the subway, but people out there carry weapons just for that reason, is to self-defense. And I honestly can say I'm not probably in the same mind state as him, but I could say that if somebody would have made a move or pulled something out on me and I had my gun on me, 4 of them would have been down in 4 shots.
Right on. Yeah, I don't know.
For me, I would have had to see the weapon or see them fidgeting with it for me to react like that, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's me too. It's like, I personally don't want to hurt people. I don't have a desire to hurt people and would like to avoid hurting people if at all possible. I would like to be able to avoid situations like that. But I mean, obviously, when you're confronted with a dangerous situation, I'm always thinking of how I can neutralize it. I'm always and if physically, if I have to neutralize a situation, I'm quite capable of doing it, folks. I'm an ex-wrestler and football player, and I've been a big old boy my whole life, so I handle myself pretty well. But you know, ooh, that was weird. Oh, I'm echoing on your side.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop out. Let me back in here in a second.
Okay,
it's on my end.
Yeah, right on. So, as I was saying, I mean, I personally would seek to try to incapacitate them somehow. But then again, I also don't carry a weapon. I don't carry a gun. I do have other things on me that I carry sometimes in my work that could be, used, but generally I prefer to handle things, man to man or with fists or whatever. But if weapons come into it, then weapons come into it. There's really not much you can do about that nowadays. But generally, for the most part, most other people don't want to hurt anybody either. It just, you get into some situations like this one where, obviously Bernard Goetz had some reason to be very upset and hurt and humiliated even. And it was just festering in him, is the way I feel. It's what I feel was happening.
Here's my thoughts on that is you could tell he's already a timid guy. For him, possibly even some anxiety, which brings up the fight or flight. He was probably after that first experience, his fight or flight was triggered and it wasn't going to happen to him again. That's the mindset I believe he was in.
I believe that that's true. I also believe that he was fantasizing about it for some time.
Sure. I do get that, but I think that first instant triggered him to be prepared for it the next time.
Right. Absolutely. That's what started the seed growing in his head. And like I say, that's why I feel most of the responsibility on this comes down on the city of New York. Because they weren't making those subways a safer place.
No.
So, I mean, people were going onto the subways and getting robbed all the freaking time. You hear people in that show, they're like, you weren't just getting robbed down in the South Bronx or in, Harlem or whatever. He's like, oh, you get robbed on Fifth Avenue. You know what I mean? Yep. And he's like, so it was like, that's how bad it was, and so, yeah, I mean. So,
and I'm going to give you this scenario literally just happened this past Sunday here in Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
Had a guy that had, and they let it happen on Sunday, I believe, and on Monday morning, the shooter was he was out already, and the DA came on and said that with the scenario that we've heard and the witnesses, his name is William, I think William Dittmer Jr. If you look him up, this just happened here this weekend. He had pulled into his neighborhood, and people had complained about his loud exhaust on his vehicle. And when he got out of his vehicle, one of the neighbors came out, which was very large compared to him, and threatened him and even put his hands on him. And he was a concealed weapons carrier, and he shot him, and he's dead. And they let him out because it was self-defense. He was protecting himself. He was scared. And that doesn't mean the investigation's going away, but that's the way the system is supposed to work. especially those that get concealed carry weapons for that purpose, for self-defense. The system is supposed to work that way, where that's the only, it's the last resort. But from what we're hearing, the guy had his hands around his neck.
Mm-hmm.
That's, now back in the day though, for concealed weapon carry, I don't know what all the training was. Today, the training, not everybody should have a concealed weapons carrier permit.
Right.
But if they do get one, their training should be very thorough, and there should be continued training. Right now, it's every 5 years. That, at least where I'm at, it's every 5 years. But you should always go target shoot as well, for the fact of being accurate with your weapon, and also learning new rules and regulations and laws that'll work against you down the road.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna make a guess here, and I mean, that guy's kind of an asshole. I also think that the neighbor who came out of his house and ran up to him and started laying hands on him is also an asshole. But but I Jesus. What are some of the underlying circumstances? I mean, was this exhaust, like, was this guy coming home at every day when, like, people's kids were asleep, and, like, this guy's exhaust was disturbing people's households every day, and, like, they were just getting tired of him, and he was just being an asshole and ignoring everybody? I mean, I'd be kind of interested in how much of a jerk this guy was, and how much was he provoking it.
Well, there were other complaints about his exhaust.
Yeah.
He wasn't in a big V8 pickup, at least from what I saw, the vehicle that they had taped off. It seemed to me like, and it looked like it was in a lower income neighborhood, and who's to know his situation? Did his muffler fall off and he just didn't have the money to fix it? I mean, especially in a time like now, with COVID, right. People don't have money. That part, I don't know the scenario either. At least the full story of it, but I know it was over an exhaust, and there were multiple complaints, and that the guy that they are doing an alcohol test, because it's reported that he was drunk when he came out and attacked.
Well,
so
and that's why, I mean, yeah, I believe he was. That guy should have found some other way to deal with his, being upset, rather than trying to go out there and lay hands on the guy. So, obviously poor decisions were made. But that's why, I mean, this is why I think guns are a real sticky thing, dude. They're a real hornet's nest of an issue, because I would get trained, and I would trust myself to handle a weapon responsibly, but I don't think everybody's as responsible as I am. I think a lot of people aren't. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people are kind of careless, and that's where we end up with stupid situations with, people, kids shooting up schools, and, just all the dumb stuff we see happening. And
bringing that up though, right there, and that's, if you look at those scenarios, typically what causes those scenarios? Exact scenarios like what Bernard Goetz went through. He was bullied by somebody. That's right. What happens at these schools is typically over bullying most of the time. Not all of them. Some of them, There's been a couple of them that were just purely evil kids.
Right.
But a majority of them they got bullied by somebody and they got fed up. They got beat up by somebody and they were fed up. And anybody else that picked on them was going down with them.
Yeah. And that's fine, but it's because those kids were able to access those kind of weapons.
Yes.
They were able to do those things. And that's where the careless aspect comes in for me. So I know me, and I don't own weapons. I probably will one day, but I don't currently own any firearms at present. But if I did, I know that I would be very responsible, but I don't know that everybody else will. when I see the things happening in our society, I develop an opinion that there's a lot of people out there that have a bit of a haphazard kind of attitude to gun ownership. And so that's a problem, you know? And sometimes people think when they're going into a situation where they're uncomfortable, they think bringing a gun with them is a good idea. And how many times in a situation like that, things go awry and that gun ends up getting used when it shouldn't have? You know, I don't know. So guns lead to those kinds of problems, especially with, you know, with people who are, you know, having some mental instabilities, we'll say, particularly. So I don't know. It's a sticky issue, but I agree with you about the training. I agree with you about it shouldn't just be one time. You should kind of have to go back and do little top-ups or something every once in a while to just kind of refresher courses or something. I think that would be a good idea. I think I would just like to see a whole more serious attitude being taken by gun owners around the country about what it means to be a gun owner. And I know that is not popular with gun owners because I get it. They don't want anybody telling them how to do what they do, or they don't want anybody in their business. But the fact of the matter is they're deadly. They're deadly items.
Here from being a gun owner, the logic of many, a lot of people use trigger locks to keep kids away.
Right.
And this is kind of going on a different subject, but then you have those people that are gun owners that are in high crime areas, and their problem is if somebody breaks into their home,
right,
and now they have to go find a set of keys to get the trigger lock off the gun, they're already dead. Their wife is dead. Their kids are dead because they had to get a trigger lock. Kind of takes away the self-defense, or at least it puts another another hurdle in the way for the victim. Right. And that's the way a lot of gun owners do think.
And I know that, and that's always the argument that comes out. But and it's a fair argument. I mean, it has merit. I'm not denying that at all. But it's usually that gun or other guns that end up getting picked up by a youngster and taken where they shouldn't be, and end up getting used in some horribly, you know, tragic way. Some accident, you know, whatever. So, I mean, I don't know. I do appreciate what you're saying, but fortunately we live in the age where you can buy lock boxes that you can unlock with your thumbprint. And you certainly don't have to go fumbling for keys with your thumbprint.
And that's a very good argument as well. That is, and again, you know, there are many people out there that actually they have those where they're thinking about those certain aspects, because if it's in a lockbox that only responds to your fingerprint, you can quickly get to that, and you can actually already have it loaded.
Right. Yes. A lot of inside the box. Right. Absolutely.
Yes. And for instance, mine, even though I don't have kids that are ever in my house or in my room where mine are at.
Right.
I have one loaded, but there's not one in the chamber. So right there, if somebody did break into my bedroom, that's a step that I'm taking as a precautionary, that somebody couldn't shoot themselves because there's not one in the chamber. But in the risk of somebody coming in, that means I also have to cock that as well before I can respond. So there's many arguments as far as that part of it goes. And we could dispute that, not even dispute. It's a friendly conversation about it.
Well, yeah.
And there's good and bad on
mainly I just want the conversation to happen, because I'd like to try to see if there's a way where we can prevent some of these horribly tragic things from happening. I don't want to make gun ownership, like ridiculously arduous for gun owners, but I mean, I kind of want something in the middle.
A happy medium.
Right. You know what I mean? So, so that's where we're at. I mean, it's just like with anything in life, folks. I preach common sense. Damn it, common sense. You know.
I'm curious how many in the chat have watched at least into the second series here, or the second episode. I know Nothing But a Stump has, but has anybody else?
So is there anybody
watching
watching that's already watched episode 2 of the Trial by Media? We haven't had a comment for probably about 15 minutes. So what does that say? 5:26? Oh, wow. It's even longer than that. It's almost 30 minutes.
Maybe we got off track from
We've had people here, but they just haven't been commenting. So, or YouTube's messed up and we can't see their comments. I don't know. It's telling me 11 people are watching though.
Or maybe they don't like my thoughts on some of it.
Possibly. Maybe when we started talking about gun ownership, they're like, "Oh, that's it."
And that's fair enough.
Oh, Sheree says she's watched it. Right on. So, I don't know. Jamie and I and probably Mr. Capaldi are going to probably go again this weekend. We're going to probably be talking about some of the other episodes. Right on. No worries, folks. We were just looking to see if anybody else had watched it or how many others. So, but I'm thinking about this weekend. I'm thinking this weekend, maybe on Saturday, Jamie and Paul and I, because Paul is all fired up about this show as well. So I think maybe the three of us go live this weekend and maybe cover episodes, 3 and 4, which are 41 Shots and King Richard, right?
Yeah, I don't even know. 41 Shots for sure, because that one it brings us right back to New York actually, and there was some shady things in 41 Shots that the city government even tried to do to get things swayed their way.
Right.
One thing that we haven't finished up with is going into a little bit more in the trial and the afterward stuff here with Bernard Goetz.
Yeah.
As far as how the trial went, and the game cards that they were playing in reference. So, for instance, the people in the other car that heard the shots was one thing, and then the mother did sue,
right?
And I think was awarded what was it, $15 million, but he claimed or filed bankruptcy.
Right.
Cherie, what's your thoughts on it? Got any input on it? And
so.
Yeah, I think Rhonda's seen all of them.
Hey, I'm pretty sure she has, because she's talking about 41 Shots as well now, because we brought that up. So I think she's watched them. It's a good show, folks. I suggest you go watch it. It's very interesting. I mean,
it really does tie into the Brennan and Stephen case when you look at how the media has used, how Ken Kratz used it for his agenda
to steer the conversation, right?
Yeah,
public conversation.
Yeah, right? It's actually a really good series that way.
Yeah, and you see, folks, how it is. I mean, you're gonna see. I mean, you just see how much that crushing amount of press is just. I mean, there's no presumption of innocence with that crushing amount of press. And that's one of the things that this show really makes, kind of obvious, is that once the press starts getting involved, it becomes, it really gets decided. It really becomes it falls into the court of public opinion, which doesn't necessarily China. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it becomes all bets are off kind of deal, especially once you get to court. And if you look at, you said Big Dan's,
right,
that scenario, and if you watch that one, one of the things was the judge, allowing the cameras to be there, but not allowed to videotape the victim. And then the defense attorney asked her name and slipped it up. And I can't believe that they didn't catch that. But then after that, the media had a heyday with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely tragic. And I don't want to get too much into that one, but that one's absolutely tragic what happened there, folks. And I've honestly, nothing against the Portuguese, but I have a bone to pick with the Portuguese community in Massachusetts. Let me tell you.
Yeah, they're supporting the perpetrators over the victim.
Yeah, and saying that. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to that one later. I don't want to.
And I didn't mean to throw it into that.
No worries. No, that's fine.
They tie together when you look at what the whole series is about, and you see why they picked these cases. And really, it to the media, it's kind of not a slap in the face to them, but it's letting people notice what they've done for years when it comes to everything from court cases to victimhood. I mean, what they've done to turn and sway things to whatever their agenda may be.
Right. Yeah. I think there's something to that. I know in 41 shots, I was pretty pissed off when the realization came in that the prosecution in that case, because they were prosecuting 4 officers, they kind of phoned it in.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? They kind of phoned it in.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty shitty.
You mean phone a friend?
No, phone a friend. No, I mean they just kind of fucking showed up and barely did their job.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I was but we'll be getting to that one, folks. We'll be talking about that one. I advise everybody to go watch this show. It's really, really interesting. And like I say, when you think about the press and how much the press affected Avery and Dassey, that's what's really interesting about this show, because you're getting to see the way it riles up the communities. You know, every community in that is in this show, you see the people of the communities getting riled up and getting very, upset and agitated and vocal. And so that's why we know, I mean, when you watch this show and you see what the press is creating in these situations, that that the press in Avery and Dassey's situation was no different. Was no different.
Yep. Especially the way Ken used it.
Right. I mean, Ken weaponized Brendan's coerced confession. I mean, he weaponized it. That's what it was. Because, I mean, when you think about it, folks, it ended up not getting used in Stephen's trial. A completely different theory for Stephen's trial. But it totally, totally convinced the public that Avery was guilty, even though he wasn't convicted on that narrative. That's how powerful it was. So yeah, that's why our courts need to start taking an interest in what happens in the media. If agents of the court who are arguing in front of, a judge are doing inappropriate things in the press, then that needs to be addressed. And no slap on the wrist, because obviously we know that Wisconsin didn't care. They let that whole press conference happen and they didn't care. But we need everybody to start caring about these things. And that's what shows like this are meant to point out to people, why these things shouldn't happen. And to get everybody to start to get on the same page of why they shouldn't happen. So now I'm not saying that I wouldn't want any of this stuff to be covered publicly, but sure. I think that there needs to be a great deal more responsibility in the reporting, and for me, if you're going to be reporting on criminal justice, you better be middle of the fucking road. You better be the most middle of the fucking road motherfucker ever. Because if you're going to get on and start talking about court cases and people's lives in the balance and everything, and you're going to be charged one way or the other, that's not justice. If you're going to commentate and report on this stuff, you need to do it on the level.
Subjectively.
Exactly. And that's probably one of the biggest things our media right now can't do. It's the one thing that they have the most trouble with. And it goes either way, okay? Whether it's on the liberal outlets who are pushing their agenda, or whether it's on the conservative outlets who are pushing their agenda. Everybody's just so busy saying this is how it is and this is the way it should be, and nobody's listening to each other. And, so that's the way that goes. But hopefully people are going to start listening, because shows like this and Innocence Files, and they're pointing things out to us as Americans, folks. They're making things real simple for us to see. Hopefully enough people are going to start to look at it. Go ahead.
Wait a minute. How simple it is. We're at 4 years trying to figure out what the media tricks were with the Brendan and Stephen case.
Right.
It's not so simple.
Well, to unravel it, yeah, right. No, I know. Yeah.
I'm just giving you shit.
No, I understand.
Play on words. If it was that simple, freaking Brendan and Stephen would be out right now.
Right. Well, hey, it's like I keep telling everybody, look, folks, I had Ricky Kidd on here last night. It's like we were talking about. You want to help Stephen and Brendan, folks? Well, you're doing a good job. But you know what else helps is when we use our power as Avery Dassey supporters. The fact that there's so many of us, right? And we start using our voice to help other people like Ricky. Or supporting people like Amanda Knox, Valentino Dixon, Marty Tankliff, all these people out there who are fighting for the wrongfully convicted every day. They could use your support, folks. If they can use it. You just retweet it, and not like you have to dig into their cases and go all into the minutia like you did with Avery Dassey. You don't have to do that. You just need a very general awareness of what happens in other wrongful convictions to inform your mind, so that you know what's happened in other wrongful convictions. It is a helpful thing. I can't say it enough. It's a very helpful thing, folks. And so that's how we help Avery Dassey, by helping and using our power to help raise up other wrongfully convicted, so that their voices get louder, so that eventually mainstream America starts to hear the wrongfully convicted and the Innocence Projects screaming what should be freaking obvious, but that's how we do it. We gotta there, Ricky comes over here, he's helping me, make my platform a little better. I'm trying to help him get his platform up and running, because he's only been out of prison for 8 months. So I'm trying to help him get exposure, because I like Ricky. Ricky's a good dude, and that guy's going places. That guy has a good head on his shoulders, and he's going to be a powerful force for wrongful convictions. And so, it was brilliant talking to him. But it's helping people like Ricky, Adam Brazil, Marty Tankliff, Valentino Dixon, all these various wrongfully, Rodney Reed. There's a lot of wrongfully convicted people out there, folks, who could use help. And all, like I said, you don't need to go digging into all of their cases and read every single court transcripts for all the cases. You just need to have a very basic knowledge of what happened in those wrongful convictions. What are some of the common themes that we see in those wrongful convictions that are common with Avery Dassey, or maybe even other cases that we follow? You guys know I follow Scott Davis. You guys know I am absolutely gung-ho and pissed off at what happened in the Scott Davis case. And it's by bringing awareness to the overall problem of wrongful convictions will only end up coming around to help Avery Dassey in the end. It's like I said, it's good to educate yourself. It's good to be armed with knowledge, and knowledge of other wrongful convictions is powerful, because when people try to minimize your arguments, folks, when you're arguing with somebody on Twitter or on Facebook, and they're trying to minimize your argument, saying, oh, that's ridiculous. You can't honestly believe a law enforcement officer would do this and that and then go over there and do blah, 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 whatever, right? But if you have an awareness of other wrongful convictions, you can say, well, I know of a case where the cop did exactly that. And it was proven that he did exactly that. You see how that then prevents the person from minimizing you and puts the power right back in your hands. You see, that's why it's important. You don't have to know every single little detail about those cases, but having a general awareness of them is powerful. So I hope you guys all understand that.
So when do you think the time will come with how for one, we're already seeing that Netflix is they're using the true crime subjects to keep people going the Netflix way, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's most of them are documentaries and whatnot. But when do you think there will ever be a time where maybe the Innocence Project would be reaching out to communities to research and have more sets of eyes looking at things, looking at documents? Or maybe it never will.
Hard to say, but I would imagine a trust needs to be built up, and maybe that's part of the process with our community, folks. With us continuing to try to help out, maybe eventually they might desire to have a little bit of help of looking through things. I don't know. It might be tricky because of the way the law is, and allowing other people to look at papers from an ongoing case I don't know if that might be a problem. So, I mean, there may be some issues with it, but I would think for the Innocence Project, they just need to trust the community. I would think. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Colette, I saw that tweet. She's waiting for the next due date to whoosh by. She loves watching them whoosh by. I love that. That was funny. I was in a Facebook group the other day, folks, where this person was saying something like, "Oh, all those Avery lovers or this or that or whatever. Why don't they just realize that they're all talking about what's going to happen? Wait till the decision comes out of the Court of Appeals and they shut Zellner down and blah 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 this and that or whatever, right?" And it was all this bravado and just whatever, dude, just vitriol, right? And so I got into the comments section. I said, I go, I don't think so, dude, because I go, the state is going to have to file its response. No, this is what I said. I said, the state's going to have to stop quivering and file its response first. Don't get ahead of yourself, buddy. And that's what I said to him. And it was like within like an hour, I had like 4 or 5 other people were like liking it and hearting it and everything. I'm just like, dude, the state is so scared right now. They're so freaking scared. They don't know what to do. They don't want to file this thing right now. They know what they're going to have to do again. They're going to have to say, we didn't give the Hallbox Teresa Hallbach. They're going to have to say that again in a court paper. They don't want to do it. They want to put it off as long as possible. Whoa, Amber Alert, folks.
Missing
Amber Alerts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we even get them. You even get them from out of state. Like we'll get them from Wisconsin or Iowa, South Dakota, because we're in that kind of just that Midwest region. So, and especially if the whoever they're looking for suspectedly went to say Wisconsin or went to one of those places, or vice versa, somebody came from Iowa and is up here in our region.
Right. So
you guys.
If you're in Southern California, folks, it's a green Honda Civic, plate of 6GXX720. So doesn't say what exactly is going on, but if you see that car, let the authorities know. So
Z the Boxing Cat, Central Park 5. That was a great series to watch. I mean, not what happened to them, and it was Corey was the last one to get out, right?
Yes.
I did watch your one last night on Ricky Kidd. I missed the live, but I watched it later.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude and their perseverance that they have when they get out. It's not Corey, I don't think, that has he's working in Colorado with the Innocence Project. It was I can't remember which one.
Let's see, there's Yusuf, there's Forgetting all their names now.
Z, the boxing cat, says they are guilty. Who's guilty? The
She
Central
believes
Park
she's
Five?
saying that she believes the Central Park Five are guilty, or Z is saying that they believe the Central Park Five are guilty. I don't honestly, I don't honestly understand how you could come to that. Look at the total of the confessions. The confessions. Yeah. Okay. Well, I accept that that's your point of view, Z.
Sure, but they're all out now, and the other guy confessed to it. He confessed to
Right.
doing the whole
The
situation.
guy whose semen was in the sock after he had gotten his rocks off, the West Side rapist, right?
Yep.
The guy who went on to kill and more women and rape more women. That guy. That's the guy who did it, and he wasn't friends with the Central Park Five. They weren't all buddies going around raping together. That wasn't the case. So but that's my opinion, and Z, you're entitled to yours. So
Yeah, but that was a good one though. I mean, there's so many out there, and you're right. Where I was going with this though, watching your live with Ricky, that guy, you'd said it. His energy. I mean, he's definitely got the right mentality to come out of this on the better end as far as doing something with his life and moving forward. I mean, 23 years is a lot of years to move forward from, but I think he's doing it, and I think he's doing it pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, Z, if you want, we'll do a discussion about it sometime. We'll schedule a live if you want to come on live with me. But I have a bone to pick with some of the things you're saying. I can't reconcile them. I mean, but if you want to have a discussion about this sometime, let me know. I mean, I just don't see it. I see the prosecution was changing the sequence of events to fit their narrative. I see all kinds of things in the Central Park 5 case that should not have been going on. And like I said, the actual proof points to the East Side rapists, not those boys. So.
Yeah, and you know what? The Z is being explaining. I don't know. I've never seen them before in here, but they got seems like a fair conviction, and have done some research into that case too. So I mean, it'd be cool to see what they're already out now. So what's the harm to listen to what their aspect of it,
Yeah,
what they
like I said, I'm willing to discuss. I'm not angry, but
oh no,
I mean, I see. I can poke holes in what I'm seeing her, Z saying already, but they have not been exonerated. Well, I disagree about that. I don't even. You're gonna have to try to do more explaining of what you're talking about, because they are the exonerated 5. I mean, it's in the name now. So I mean, I assume you're speaking about some kind of technicalities or something. You're gonna have to do more explanation of what you mean, is what I'm getting at. But obviously not right here. Like I said, if you want to have a discussion sometime, maybe we do it over on Discord. We can do it through text over on Discord if you want. Maybe this weekend. But I'm you're gonna have to show me what you're talking about, because those boys were, in my mind, being intimidated and being held for an extremely long time that they shouldn't have been being held. There's too many. Even if they were guilty, it was wrong. Put it that way. Even if they were, which I don't believe they were, it was wrong. The parents weren't always with them, and so okay. But I get it. You believe what you believe, and if you want, we'll look into it and we'll get to the bottom of it. We'll find out what's what.
Hey Z, come on to a live sometime, or like Erekose said, if you're in Discord, have a chat. I mean, there's always there's always different perceptions and different views of things, and nobody's saying that you didn't research, but sometimes it's easier to have these conversations through voice and explain things on voice over chat. It's easier to understand what somebody's trying to say or the context that they're using to say it. So
there's the other problem of there's not enough footprints around the crime scene to account for all of the Central Park 5 and the Central Park rapist. It's just not there. This many people didn't commit that act, But anyways, we'll talk about it if you want. Z, we'll talk about it in the future. Too many things that don't line up. So you're gonna have to convince me how all those things that don't line up somehow line up. You have a tall order. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, very true, Rhonda. Yeah, texting makes it hard, and which is why using YouTube and Streamlabs and whatnot in Discord has been it's been awesome. It's actually resolved quite a few problems within the community by doing things by voice or being on a live. People get to know people in the community a little bit better as well.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Let us know, Z. I don't know if you're on Discord or not, but let us know, and we can talk about it over there. And maybe we do a little live to talk about your what you feel you see in the Central Park 5 case, and we can have a big old discussion live about it if you want. So I don't know if you're over on Discord or not, but go over there and message us, and we'll see what we can arrange. It might be a good conversation. I'd like to flesh it out one way or the other. So let us know.
I wish I could put the link in here, but being that I'm using my phone, I can't. I can't pull up the Discord link and copy it.
I can.
That's because you all got those high-powered PCs.
Mm-hmm.
No, but this here was a really good discussion, in reference to that episode too. It got my attention that the day you mentioned it, I was watching it that night, and you and I talked. Well, probably a couple hours in reference to it.
Yeah.
And great discussion about it, and that's why we decided to go live with it and kind of talk about it more. I mean, and I think we're going to see many more of this type of show popping up in Netflix, just like we're seeing now. It seems to be overrun with true crime stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least that there's that content's coming out. At least it seems that they're not afraid of that kind of content after making a murderer, at least. So.
Yep.
Right.
There's some other based on true events movies, like Fall from Grace is a good one. That's based on a true story. I don't know if people have watched that one. Basically, a woman was conned by one of her friends, and they stole her money. They stole her house, and they had done this all over the U.S. Her and her son had done this, taking people's money, and they had a basement full of women that they had done this to, that they were keeping alive so that they could keep checks, and they actually found them. But it's all, and right. I don't know that it all follows everything true, but it's all based on true events. So I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hey, Z, you can actually come. I'm actually on my phone as well. The only reason I'm seeing the chat is that I've got a tablet open, so I can watch the live stream on my chat and respond to that. But you can do these discussions on live with your chat. Erekose can send you a link, and you can jump on a live.
I'm the only one who needs. Only the host has to have a computer.
Yeah. So, and you don't have to put a picture on there if you don't want to. You can go on with voice. I mean, and it's a great platform for it. So don't be afraid.
Well, Z's going to go ahead and collect some information. We'll see. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see what it is, and I'll be as convinced as I am when I see it. So not knowing what that level will be.
Well, be open-minded. That's all.
I'm always
just
open-minded.
Yep.
It's just I'm for me. There's a lot of little dots that are going to need explaining for lining up in order to believe what Z is suggesting. So I'm intrigued. I'm not completely adverse to it, but I'm intrigued. So we'll see.
Many have heard me say this for a long time, even in reference to Stephen and Brendan's case when it comes to some of the guilters. I know there's definitely got to be some respectful guilters out there that these kind of debate can happen, and I think they should. I'm not saying that they'd be able to sway me or we'd be able to sway them, but having the conversation with people that are not going to result to name calling or stuff like that, I think they definitely can be educational, even still on the mindset of people on the other side. I think all that is possible still to this day. We've got some really good friends that they don't believe it's worth the time, and they may be right. But I think one day that type of a conversation could happen and could be pretty beneficial.
Yeah. Well, we'll work on it. We'll see. I mean, Z's pretty convinced, so obviously we'll see what you have to overcome. You have to overcome the physical evidence. Z, I'm waiting to see how you're going to do that. So we'll see. I'm intrigued. So the fact is the West Side Rapist's nut was in that sock, and none of the others. It was just him. And then, like I said, I didn't see 7 sets of freaking footprints, or nobody reports 7 sets of footprints around the crime scene. So that's another hurdle you got. So we'll have to see, though. I'm like I said, I'm open-minded and intrigued. So
yeah. Rhonda, I have no idea. I haven't seen Falcon in a long time, but yes, he's one of the guilters that you can definitely have a conversation with, and he's respectful and he's intelligent. He's definitely a smart guy. So he's actually one of the ones as far as guilters go, that I miss being around, because he is that he makes the conversation interesting, and he's a decent person at this all in the same sentence.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He even came out for one of our banner tours. Met us up in Margaritaville over at Universal City Walk. That was pretty fun. So
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So, all right, well, we've been on now for an hour and 23 minutes. So I think we've talked about episode 2 enough, folks. Be looking for this weekend. I think Jamie and Paul and I are going to get together to cover a couple more episodes of this show. Really fascinating stuff, folks. I think if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, do it at some point. It's very interesting. I mean, I do remember hearing about some of these things. Like, I do remember about the Jenny Jones thing. Back when I was in high school. I do remember hearing about it. Didn't know a lot about it, but I remember hearing about it. Final episode is all about Mr. Buttigieg.
No, not Buttigieg. It's Rob Blagojevich, not Buttigieg.
Sorry. Yeah, Blagojevich. Yeah, that's the one. Sorry. Yeah, that guy. Anyway, governor of Illinois. That one, oh, brother. That one is something else, dude. That guy. Part of me feels sorry for the guy, and part of me it's like, nah, you asked for it, you knucklehead. You know what I mean? It's just like, but anyways.
Hey, quick question. I got to ask Rhonda this real quick. If Rhonda has seen the movie The Accused, because I believe that the Big Dan's scenario is that's an identical to that Jodie Foster movie, The Accused. Everything just lines up the same, and I'd have to look back to see if there's any reference to this scenario in there, but she just brought up something. Yes. Yep. So yeah, I'm right.
Jodie Foster, right?
Rich hasn't seen that movie.
Which is odd because I generally see pretty much everything with Jodie Foster, but it appears I've missed one.
And she said it was based on Big Dan's. And that's what I was thinking. As soon as it came on, I thought about that. So we'll have to go over that. I haven't been on live with I drive a hovercraft or a havercraft in a long time.
Havercraft. That's funny. That is funny. He also drives a stick shift. Has he ever shown you a picture of the man pedal? Anyway.
Well, that's when he changed his name to that. That's when I came up with the whole I drive a havercraft because of the havering joke.
Right.
That's where that came from.
Yeah, it's very funny. No, I get it. He definitely is in charge of his havercraft. But I've already seen Big Dan's Nothing But a Stump, but I just we're not covering that yet. That's going to probably be, let's see. Well, no, the next two are going to be 41 Shots and King Richard, and then so that's probably the two that Jamie and Paul and I will talk about on Saturday, and then we'll probably I don't know how we'll do it. Maybe we'll do something on Sunday too. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll figure it out. It's a good series to discuss about.
Or maybe we continue going one episode at a time. So. I don't know. We'll
see. That'd probably be easier, even though
it's better that we don't get things mixed up. So yeah.
Yeah. Rhonda's saying watch the movie The Accused with Jodie Foster.
Right.
It ties in. Yeah, The Accused. Yep. Great movie. I want to say it's from 87, maybe 80, 86, something like that.
Right.
So, yeah. When you got time, I know you're a busy guy.
Hopefully it's on Netflix. Anyway.
We'll figure out a way for you to get it.
Right on. Okay, well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be coming back to talk more about Trial by Media. Hope you guys are going to go out there and watch it because it's pretty interesting stuff. And like I said, pertains to Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey because we know what the media was doing to them too back when the trials were going on. So it's interesting stuff. I advise everybody to go check it out. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you. Say goodbye, Jamie.
Have a good night, guys.